Identity V's newest hunter, the Goatman, will soon be releasing for everyone to play, so you'll need to know exactly what to expect if you want to succeed with him. Luckily, I've got you covered. Let's start off by taking a brief look at his abilities. Jeffrey's first external trait is called Cage of Lost Lambs. By pressing your ability button, you'll drain 40 resentment from your power meter and create a circular cage, which prohibits players from both entering and exiting. Resentment replenishes at 2 per second, and the cage cannot be created if the amount of resentment you have does not meet the requirement. If you or a survivor inside of the cage collides with the parameter, they will instantly be teleported to the opposite side. Keep in mind that survivors have a 2-second cooldown before they can do this again, while you only have a 0.8-second cooldown. Both you and the survivors also have the ability to break the cage, which completely removes it from the map after the dismantling animation is completed. However, the animation becomes shorter to complete for survivors when a cage is positioned next to a rocket share. Survivors also cannot break the cage when another free-moving survivor is inside. Now we're going to move on to Goatman's second external trait, Shackled. Whenever you are outside of your cage, whether you currently have one spawned in the map or not, your attacks only deal half of the normal damage. However, anytime you hit a survivor which is inside of the cage, your attacks will deal the normal amount of damage. Also note that whenever an attack is successfully performed inside of a cage, that cage will be destroyed instantly. Now let's take a look at Jeffrey's presence abilities. At first presence, he starts with Dominion, which allows you to adjust the size of his cage at any time, from 9 meters to 12 meters to 15 meters. At second presence, he unlocks Backstep, which upon pressing your ability button, allows you to leap backwards a certain distance. The distance of this leap is reset if you collide with the parameter of a cage while you're inside of it. And finally, at third presence, you get an extra 2.5 per second recovery speed to your resentment. Now, before we get into the gameplay, let's talk about builds. I would strongly suggest bringing Detention on Goatman, because his cages make it really easy to catch survivors in the endgame for a free down. As for other traits, none of them are strongly required, so I'd suggest to experiment with them and see which ones work best for you. I do, however, suggest bringing a handful of anti-stun traits, such as Desperate Fight and Addiction, as Goatman tends to crumble easily under high-pressure situations. While Goatman is good at winning 1v1s, he's not particularly strong at fending off harassers. For your skill, I would recommend bringing Warp because of its versatility, and because unlike most hunters, Blink is not a skill that you're going to get value out of with this hunter. Now, on to strategy. I'd like to introduce a method I call the Hit, Contain, Camp method, which corresponds to each of his cage sizes. The 9-meter cage is what you're mainly going to want to use to hit survivors, as its small size severely limits where the survivor can go and how well they can evade you. The 12-meter cage is great for blocking off small to medium-sized kiting areas, which is important so that the survivor has less resources to use against you if they do get trapped. And finally, the 15-meter cage is great for camping, since you can pull off some pretty devious camping strategies with it. Of course, these are solely just suggestions, and you should use the cage sizes any way you see fit. The general idea when finding a survivor is that they'll try to run to the nearest kiting area once they get vision of you, so you'll have to act fast by blocking off their kiting area they're running towards. Once they realize that they can't access that area for protection, you should be close enough to them to spawn another cage and get a hit. Now at first it might seem a waste to use your cage to block off a kiting area when you could just spawn one around the survivor and try catching them normally, but blocking off their resources is important for 2 reasons. The first reason is that when you spawn a cage to block off in front of them, they won't be able to use the parameter of that cage to teleport to the other side and possibly evade you. Instead, they will be blocked off completely, and you can get behind them, cage, and hit them. It's also important to know that just because a survivor is caged does not mean that you are invincible and will get the guaranteed hit on them. Not all survivors are stupid, and if they have resources to use inside of the cage, they will take advantage of that. However, if they are out in the open and you aren't close enough to them, you can time your cage to spawn right in front of them so that they instantly teleport back to you and you can get a hit. If you do end up caging a survivor inside of a kiting area, this is where Backstep will come in handy the most. There's no proper way to use it since the situations can vary greatly, but keep in mind that you can cancel Backstep at any point during the animation, so it can be useful for mind-gaming survivors into thinking you're going to teleport to the other side. Once you have a survivor unchained, this is where your 15-meter cage comes into play. Once you spot a survivor running towards the chaired survivor, hold the ability button and position the parameter of your cage right in front of the rescuing survivor. If you time it right, they will be teleported all the way to the other side away from the chaired survivor. You can then instantly break the cage and force them to run the full distance back to the chair. Just make sure not to place it too far in front of the survivor, or they'll stop before they get teleported, and not too far behind the survivor, since there is a small window where the survivor can pass through the cage when it is created. Once you have your first survivor eliminated, this is where you should really be using Warp to pressure the map as much as you can, because by default, Goatman really doesn't have any pressure. Camping at this point may be situational, so it's best to base your action off of how many ciphers have been completed, how many are being worked on, and how many survivors are nearby. Lastly, Goatman in his current state is really no more than a tie hunter, so don't be disappointed if you don't get a full team wipe every game. That's to be expected. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and if it helped you at all, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.